Welcome to this webinar, ladies and gentlemen, about the International Day of Parliamentarism, which was established in 2018 through a United Nations General Assembly resolution recognizing the role of parliaments in national plans and strategies and ensuring greater transparency and accountability at national and global levels. The date of 30 June was chosen because it was the day when the Interparliamentary Union, a global organization of parliaments, was founded in 1889. UN member states have encouraged the growing involvement of parliamentarians and parliamentary organizations in the work of the United Nations. Parliamentary organizations play a leading role in promoting the engagement of parliaments in the United Nations processes and activities. Indeed, there is a recognition that when parliamentarians communicate their concerns and aspirations to the United Nations, the organization is empowered to work more closely with the people of the world. Instituting an International Day for Parliaments is particularly important at this critical time for parliamentary democracy, when people are losing trust in political institutions, when democracy itself is facing challenges from populist and nationalist movements, when autocratic and dictatorial regimes are on the rise. If democracy is to thrive, then parliaments, as the cornerstone of functioning democracies, need to be strong, transparent, accountable, and representative. Strong parliaments are a cornerstone of democracy. They represent the voice of the people, pass laws, allocate funds to implement laws and policies, and hold governments to account. They have a special duty to advance human rights and promote sustainable development. They are expected to make sure that policies benefit all people, especially the most vulnerable. There is a strong relationship between parliamentarism and good governance. This day celebrates parliaments and the ways in which parliamentary systems of governance improve the day-to-day lives of people the world over. It is also an opportunity for parliaments to take stock, identify challenges and ways to address them effectively. The International Day of Parliamentarism is a time to review the progress that parliaments have made in achieving some key goals to be more representative and move with the times, including carrying out self-assessment, working to include more women and young MPs, and adapting to new technologies. In 2021, the Interparliamentary Union and its member parliaments are marking the day with a number of events focusing on youth empowerment, following the recent launch of their campaign named I Say Yes to Youth in Parliament. Taijimen has always been at the forefront of teaching its youth about democracy and the rule of law in theory and in practice. Young Taijimen Dizi massively support democracy in Taiwan and use it to defend their rights and the rights of others. For years, they have used their freedom of expression and assembly to denounce the persecution of their movement by the National Tax Administration. Taxation of the income of individuals, associations, and companies is a mechanism that is necessary in a democratic society to guarantee the common good, to finance public and social services, to support investments and innovation. However, taxation must be fair and transparent if one wants the citizens to abide by its rules. When confidence in the taxation system is lost because of corruption, cheating, or abuse, the rule of law and democracy are in danger and society must react. This is the situation that Taijimen has painfully experienced and against which it has decided to react. Corruption and unfair governance threaten democracy. In 2017, Taijimen took the initiative to defend all Taiwanese citizens treated unfairly by the taxation administration and asked a number of prestigious experts for assistance and support for the creation of a tax and legal reform league. The objective of the league was to help victims of the National Taxation Bureau to inform Taiwanese taxpayers about their legitimate rights, to invite scholars and experts to propose reforms, and to check the work of public servants, identify and sanction those who have abused their power in total impunity. The Tax Legal Reform League does not only criticize the mismanagement of tax collection by the National Taxation Bureau and the abuse or of its disproportionate power, but it also makes constructive proposals to remedy it. The Parliament of Taiwan should organize a hearing of defenders of taxpayers' rights and listen to the proposals of the experts of the Tax and Legal Reform League. A few days ago, we have sent their proposals to a number of members of the Parliament of Taiwan, but also to scholars, experts, Taiwanese media, and foreign correspondents in Taipei. The main proposals of the League are known, and I will not list them all here, just pointing at a few of them. One of the proposals is that the taxation should have a clear legal basis and strictly comply with the implementation of procedures which are not in breach with the Constitution. Another proposal is that if the tax authorities cannot prove that the taxpayer has intentionally evaded taxation, they should not impose a penalty. Another one is that the appeals committee of the Ministry of Finance dealing with complaints of taxpayers should be composed of independent experts and scholars in order to be fair and impartial. And the last one, last but not least, the system of tax bonuses granted to officers of the National Tax Bureau and the enforcement agency, which are proportional to amounts collected through taxes and auctions, can lead and does lead to undue fiscal and judicial harassment and should be repealed. Now, Taiwanese MPs know what are the constructive proposals of the Tax and Legal Reform League. The ball is now in the court of the Taiwanese parliament, and it will be up to them now to react to those constructive proposals. Thank you for listening to my introduction, and I would like now to introduce the first speaker, who will be, sorry, I'm looking for my papers. Yeah, so who will be Mr. PierLuigi Zoccatelli, because the order had been changed in the meantime. Mr. Zoccatelli, the floor is yours, and maybe you can introduce yourself first.
Yes, many thanks for your kind introduction, Willy. I'm the Deputy Director of CESNUR, and I'm teaching Sociology of Religion at the Pontifical Salesian University here in Turin. And first of all, I wish to give my greetings to the participants, to all the participants, and wish to thanks for inviting me to this conference about parliaments, freedom of religion or belief, and the Taiwan case, this conference organized by the Center for Studies on New Religion. I'm receiving right now a message, maybe we forgot.
Yes, I'm sorry. I forgot that we have to listen first. Yes, to watch first the video.
I've studied the Taiwan tax case for close to 2 years. I've written an article about the Taiwan tax case. I don't think I've seen more abuse of the right of due process in any situation than I have seen in the Taiwan tax case. It is not due process to accuse a human being in a civilized society of raising goblins. The mere statement of that would cause individuals and should cause individuals to question the sanity of the prosecutor. And in any court of law, such an absurd allegation would be thrown out. I think that a 20-year ordeal is a violation of human rights. Justice delayed is justice denied. And to delay justice for 20 years and to still not have it, as we're sitting here today, is, in my mind, a denial of justice. And the thing that perplexes and even disturbs me is the fact that that justice has been denied and delayed by just a few individuals. It is appalling to me that those few individuals could hijack an entire government.
Thank you very much for this presentation. And I will now give back the floor to PierLuigi Zoccatelli. Sorry for the disturbance.
No, you're welcome. And once again, my greetings to all the participants, and once again, thanks for inviting me to this conference about parliaments, freedom of religion or belief, and the Taiwan case. This conference is well organized by CESNUR and Human Rights Without Frontiers. And I will take some 5-10 minutes to give my speech. As we celebrate the International Day of the Parliaments, it is important to note that the parliamentary principle we honor today is not about the existence of the elected assemblies. These also exist in contemporary non-democratic regimes, but have very limited or no powers. The parliamentary principle, which was created in early modern Britain, although with precedents in Spain and Portugal, is about the separation of powers and the fact that the legislative power vested in the parliament should be able to control and criticize the executive power vested in the king or the president, and the government and the judiciary power vested in the judges and prosecutors. Typically, non-democratic regimes reduce parliaments to a purely decorative function when they do not simply eliminate them. This allows the executive powers to reign unchecked. For this reason, when a non-democratic regime transitions into a democratic one, citizens normally see parliaments with sympathy. This happened in Italy after the fascist regime and in Taiwan after the martial law. This social capital of sympathy the parliaments enjoy is immediately tested by how they are able to deal with transitional justice, that is, the redress of the injustices created by the previous non-democratic system. This is not easy and often includes an element of restoring religious liberty. In fact, in Italy, the democratic parliaments that emerged after World War II left in place for several decades measures of the previous fascist era that had restricted religious liberty, and decisive progress happened only in the 1980s. Old bureaucrats maintain old habits, difficult to change. From what I have learned by observing Taiwan from outside, it seems to me that Taiwan shares with Italy and other countries the problem of transitional justice, including in the field of religious liberty. Taiwan gained a truly independent parliament known as the Legislative Yuan, as the martial law era ended in 1987. However, there was a long transition that also affected religious liberty. When in 1996, the government cracked down on several religious and spiritual movements, including Taiji men, accused of not supporting the presidential candidate that won the elections, the Legislative Yuan was not able or not willing to stop the injustice. Later, some things improved, but there was no redress based on transitional justice for injustices perpetrated after 1987. Interestingly, the Legislative Yuan tried to intervene repeatedly and solve the Taiji men case. It conducted extensive public hearings and meetings about the Taiji men tax case for quite 2 decades. 1999, 82 legislators signed a joint petition asking the National Taxation Bureau to cancel the illegal tax bills that had been issued against Taiji men without waiting for the outcome of the criminal case. In November 2013, after Taiji men had emerged victorious from the ill-founded criminal case, again 33 legislators co-signed a proposal requesting the Ministry of Finance to revoke the unlawful tax bills. Today, over 300 legislators from different parties have asked in different ways the National Tax Bureau to revoke the tax bills, including the bill for 1992 that has finally been maintained and enforced. The question is, why were so many legislators unsuccessful? Why was the legislative power unable to control a branch of the executive power, or perhaps just some rogue bureaucrats? Based on parallels with the Italian experience, I wish to suggest 3 possible explanations. First, the driving force against the whole persecution of Taiji men was a powerful prosecutor with an unusual ability to manipulate the media. As we have seen in Italy, because of real corruption cases, the third power, the judiciary, was able to gain more power and limit the possibility of the other powers, legislative and the executive, to control its possible abuses. Members of the parliament are afraid of powerful and media-connected prosecutors. Perhaps something similar happened in Taiwan. Second, perhaps some toxic residuals of the non-democratic period were still at work in Taiwan's system, notwithstanding its laudable democratic achievements, as they were at work in Italy for many years and decades after the fall of fascism. Third, bureaucrats in the tax offices are also powerful. Politicians are taxpayers themselves, and some of them may be reluctant to make enemies there. In Italy, very powerful politicians had their careers compromised by accusation of tax evasion, and perhaps in Taiwan as well, legislators didn't want to engage to the bitter end in a dangerous confrontation with tax bureaucrats. I may, of course, be wrong, but this possible explanation hints at the conclusion that until the Taijimen case is solved, the principle of parliamentary control of the other powers is in some sort of jeopardy in Taiwan. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, PierLuigi, and especially for pointing at the necessity of the separation of powers to have healthy democracy, and also for your comparison between the challenges faced both by Taiwan and also by Italy, and exchanges of ideas and opinions and feelings are always useful to move forward for anybody sometimes feeling alone in front of long-standing problems. I will now give the floor to Massimo Introvigne, and I will not introduce him because I think his CV would take a long time, and I will ask him to present himself.
Good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. I'm Massimo Introvigne, an Italian sociologist and managing director of CESNUR and editor-in-chief of the daily magazine Bitterwinter, who had published extensively on the Taijimen case. I want to reflect on the ineffectiveness of the legislative yuan, the Parliament of Taiwan, in solving the Taijimen case. Parliament inevitably is a kind of theater. This comment by Dutch historian Henk de Velde may serve as an introduction to a critical reflection on the role of parliaments in protecting or endangering freedom of religion or belief, form, and the Taijimen case. Today, it's quite common to read criticism of drama politics, implying that parliaments are losing their role and members of the parliaments are mostly producing theatrical shows intended for the media. And sometimes these critics seem to imply this is something new connected with television or the internet. But that's not the case. The comparison between parliaments and theaters is actually very old and was not always negative. This discussion goes back to the Irish philosopher Edmund Burke, who was himself a member of the British Parliament. Burke was a conservative philosopher and a critic of the French Revolution. He famously compared the members of the revolutionary French National Assembly to comedians of a failure. However, it's less well known that Burke also compared performances in the British Parliament to a dignified Shakespearean drama. He even recommended that MPs go to good theaters and learn there how to behave on public stage. So for Burke, a parliament may be a theater in the good, he would say, Shakespearean sense, when the publicity of the parliament's deliberation meets with dignity. In France, however, even after the revolution, parliamentary debates were more often compared to comedy, bad theater, or melodrama. Foreign visitors even noted how much the architecture of Palais Bourbon in Paris, which is where, by the way, the French National Assembly still meets today, was reminiscent of a theater. Delphine de Girardin, a famous socialite and author, he wrote under the pen name of Le Vicomte de Launay, who had married an MP, wrote that everything that gives an air of théâtre to the national representation in the parliament deprives it of its dignity. In the field of form, freedom of religion or belief, parliaments may act as watchdog of religious liberty against the injustices of the government. However, the parliament's theatrical side may also prevail when some MPs perform for their audience of voters following what they believe to be the opinion of the majority or the media. For instance, in Italy and France and in other countries as well, media campaigns against the religious movements labeled as cults or sect in French often lead to shows in parliaments. Parliamentarians will propose draconian laws knowing that they are clearly against the constitutions and they have no chances of being passed, yet these proposals may guarantee to some MPs a couple of minutes in the evening news. In Taiwan, we know that the legislative yuan, as PierLuigi Zoccatelli just mentioned, held hearings and discussed the Taijimen case several times. Well, I have not seen videos of these events, but can easily imagine how dramatic they should have been. The Taijimen case in itself looks like a Shakespearean drama. Yet, because the lack of results, the question arises. Did the theatrical nature of modern parliaments led some MPs to make promises they later forgot? How many of them were just trying to please the Taijimen Dizi, who after all also vote in the elections? How many of them were sincere and worked hard to give Taijimen justice? Probably many were very much sincere, but the theatrical nature of the parliaments always leaves a doubt about the performance. Modern political scientists have also noted that today parliaments can be compared to theaters in another and quite negative way. Theater may be beautiful, important, inspiring, but it is not reality. Parliaments may become just the theatrical part of politics, while the real decisions are not taken in the parliament, but by cabinet ministers, bureaucrats, judges, whose deliberations are less visible to the public, but much more effective. Italy is one of the countries that has witnessed the prevalence of the judiciary over the legislature. Judges have created and defeated governments by investigating the right person at the right time and letting the media know what they were doing, no matter what the final outcome of the trial would be. Burke believed that the parliament was where theater happened, while courts of law, at least in the United Kingdom, rarely admitted the public and were much more boring. But today we see a theatralization of the judiciary and particularly of the prosecutorial function. Prosecutors act theatrically and become media stars. We have cases in Italy, but the case of prosecutor who, in the Taijimen case and also in other cases he handled, clearly demonstrates this point. And the prosecutor's theater may be more powerful than the parliamentary theater. It is not about the law, it's about the media. Prosecutor who, in the Taijimen case, breached many laws. Parliamentarians tried to protest against these abuses, yet prosecutor whose theatrical antics pleased some media, which nicknamed him the Rambo prosecutor. And the parliament or other Taiwanese institutions never really managed to have him sanctioned. Bureaucrats, on the other hand, are the antithesis of theater. They often operate in the shadows. While the parliament plays for an audience, bureaucrats play for themselves, and their deliberations are invisible. Only their effects are visible. Rogue bureaucrats may lead to the parliaments both the visibility and the ineffectiveness of the theater, while they keep the real power and their abuse remain unchecked. Again, and I conclude, in the Taijimen case, hundreds of parliamentarians asked the rogue and tax and enforcement bureaucrats who were persecuting Taijimen to stop their clearly illegal actions. But they got no result. I insist, hundreds of legislators, no results. This gives a strong impression that in Taiwan, some bureaucrats believe they can leave the legislative yuan to perform its political theater while they continue to run the real show and do whatever they want, just ignoring the MPs. It doesn't happen only in Taiwan, but certainly Taijimen is a spectacular case. It shows that the principle we celebrate in this International Day of Parliamentarianism is in a state of crisis, even in democratic society. We should congratulate those MPs in Taiwan who fought a difficult fight and took a clear stand in this conflict. However, we should also note that so far the rogue bureaucrats won. Something should be done to restore both justice and the very credibility of a democratic parliament. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Massimo, for your presentation, telling us that the world, in fact, is a big theater, and especially because of the influence of the media being the stage where all sorts of actors want to appear, and not only members of the parliament, but also members of the government, also judges. And those tensions are not in favor of the well-being of the people and the country and democracy. In fact, everyone using its part, the part that is or she is playing on the stage for his own personal objectives. And so we must be very careful with the health and the well-being of our democracies, whether it is in Taiwan or in Europe or in North America or Central and South America. Now I will ask Marco Respinti to, well, I will give him the floor. Is well known because he has participated in many webinars about the Taijimen situation. But just to remind that he is the editor-in-chief of International Family News. He's an Italian professional journalist, member of the International Federation of Journalists, essayists, translators, and many other qualities that I will not list here, but is also working very closely, of course, with Bitter Winter and the Journal of CESNUR. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Fautré.
Yes, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Fautré. It's always a pleasure to be a part of these important seminars or webinars dealing with the Taijimen case and pointing to that most fundamental human right, which is religious freedom. At this point of our afternoon, I live in Italy, so for me it's afternoon. It is not my intention to wrap up in any way the preceding speeches by Professor Introvigne and Professor Zoccatelli, and neither yours, Willy. I just want, but I cannot refrain myself before going to the second part of our webinar, where witnesses, Dizi, and former legislator will take the floor. I cannot refrain myself from a few very short thoughts on the special occasion that is uniting us today, which is, of course, as we mentioned many times, appropriately, a day specifically dedicated to reflect upon the reality of Parliament. It's not very common to find oneself, as I said, in an afternoon, I live in Italy, reflecting on Parliament. It is not a common topic of conversation. We sometimes mock parliaments, we criticize parliaments, but it's rare that we find ourselves into reflecting on the proper role of parliaments. And as you said, Professor Introvigne, Professor Zoccatelli, Mr. Fautré, as you just said, parliaments are an essential part of what we perceive as a democratic society. It is a common feature to consider parliaments as a kind of a modern creation. They oftentimes in schools we are taught that parliaments are more or less a creation of the 18th century, maybe a little bit before. I consider this, after reading and reading, a great mistake. Parliaments, in one form or another, with this name or with other names, date well back. Parliaments are the other name, the second name of what we perceive as democracy. And what we perceive as democracy is not a regime. Go back to one pillar of the Western thought, the Greek philosopher Aristotle. Democracy is a condition of exercising power. For if this is true, according to Aristotle, democracy is not one form of government, but it's possible to have democracy with different form of governments if they govern for the common good of the people. So democracy is not a regime, is a condition of power, and the first condition of democracy is having parliament as the place of representativeness of the people in front of power. So as I said, in one form or another, with this name or others, parliaments date way back. Probably they were born out of the same idea that brought us democracy, not as a regime, but as a condition of power. So parliaments are another way to express one key aspect of the rule of law. And the rule of law is one thing with being properly taxed or not taxed, as Mr. Fautré was saying during the introduction. So there is one interesting combination between parliaments, democracy, the rule of law, and the way to be taxed properly. Let me just add that all this has of course to do with religious liberty. Religious liberty is one condition of true democracy. If religious liberty, which is the first human right of the people, is not recognized as such, one cannot claim to have a true democracy. We cannot say that we have a true democracy as the right to participate to power by the people if we don't have the right to express ourselves on the most important human feature, God. It exists, it doesn't exist, what comes next if it exists, what comes next if it doesn't exist. So democracy, parliaments, rule of law, taxes, and religious freedom are the different ways, are different steps through which, at least in the West, civilization was born and continued. I will just pass the floor to the next section of the webinar, of our webinar, just commending, since we spoke about bureaucracy and the role of bureaucracy, I will just commend a very small but fine book or booklet by Austrian author Ludwig von Mises called simply Bureaucracy, which is an illuminating description of what Dr. Introvigne just said, at least partially. And again, I thank him for mentioning Edmund Burke, which is a key author, very dear to your servant today. So I will move to the second section of our webinar today, introducing witnesses, Dizi, and former legislators in Taiwan. But first of all, let us watch a second video entitled "A Dream Delayed But Not Forgotten." I've seen that different times. You may be seeing this for the first time. Let's use it to move from principles, which are always important, from a philosophical approach, a scholarly approach, very important, to the strong reality of what happens to people, to a community, when the power of the state, in this case, the taxing power, goes against them directly.
Yeah, the video, please.
是繁华的曾经，荒野蔓草是美好的曾经，多少年风吹日晒和雨淋，多少年午夜梦回总心情，多少年心血片片碎满地，多少年青丝白头人老去。
I remember Shifu liked that place a lot. It had gorgeous views. We would sit there with Shifu and talk about how we would use the place for our future Qigong practice.
Shimu was very considerate and said, if we get our villa ready, when overseas Dizi come back, instead of finding hotels to stay, they will be able to stay in this villa.
I can imagine that if this place had been developed according to Shifu's plan, it would have been a wonderful place.
Speaking about this, my heart aches. It really aches. Because it's ruined like this. Now we have no way to save this place anymore.
But who can restore our 25 wasted years? Who can restore this place for us?
When I take a closer look, I found many meditation mats, and I felt so upset. And how would Shifu feel if he sees this? He has put his heart and soul into this place.
During the first criminal trial, Judge Zhao Zirong asked Shifu to state his opinion. With tears in his eyes, Shifu said that as contemporary Zhangmenren of Taijimen, he would safeguard Taijimen and his Dizi with his life and everything. Regrettably, the NCB simply believed that the case involved tax evasion based on the prosecutor's indictment and imposed a restriction in 1997, preventing Taijimen from disposing the villa. At the time, the validity of the tax bills had not been verified and the criminal decision had not been issued. How could they issue the tax bills? How could they impose double restrictions on the property? That was illegal.
At the beginning of the criminal case, the prosecutor seized all the assets of Zhang Menren and his wife, including a few $1,000s in his bank account, leaving him with no money. The Tax Bureau, based on the prosecutor's indictment, issued sky-high tax bills without investigating the matter. Zhang Menren did not have any money left to provide as collateral for the tax bills. Then an enforcement order would be carried out and his property could be sold. However, the tax bills have been invalid from the beginning and should not have been issued. For over 23 years, Zhang Menren and his wife were unable to use this place. This property had been seized for such a long time, but Zhang Menren still had to pay the property taxes. The government had seized the property for over 23 years, and now this house is dilapidated and lies in ruins.
According to the current regulations, you cannot reapply for a construction permit. It's impossible to demolish and rebuild the house. If you want to renovate, it will cost more than to rebuild.
One may not be familiar with all the details of the Taijimen case, but after watching a movie like this, one perceives immediately the truthfulness of the words pronounced by Professor Jacobsen in the first video. This is a violation of a human right. Without adding nothing more, I introduce the second part of our webinar, giving the floor to our first witness, Mr. Kang, a former legislator in Taiwan. The floor is yours.
The prosecutor brought a fabricated and baseless prosecution. Now the courts have found the defendants not guilty. Not guilty. What does that mean? It means that at the outset, all the tax information provided by the prosecutor was fake. Right, it was all fake. It has been 25 years. In the past 25 years, Taiwan brothers and sisters have persevered for justice. Back in 2010, when I served as a legislator and the convener of the Finance Committee in the Legislative Yuan, I invited the then Finance Minister Li Shu-De and other parties of interest to a public hearing and a coordination meeting, especially to address the issue of tax justice. At the time, Minister Li fully understood that the tax bills and penalties were rather improper and unjust. In the coordination meeting, I particularly asked our colleagues in the Ministry of Finance to withdraw the tax bills and penalties as soon as possible. We were delighted as we thought we'd finally get the justice we've been waiting for. We have hoped that the government would correct its mistakes. Why have the Taijiman brothers and sisters persisted for the past 25 years? They must have a valid rationale for their actions. It is not about money. It is a matter of justice. Over the past 25 years, I think that have not only allowed many people to understand the meaning of tax justice, but also enable all of our colleagues in the public service to better understand that when they make a wrong decision, it not only affects one or two people, but the entire public, as it costs people so much time, money, blood, and sweat. We also hope that as a result of the decision and case, our government will consider the implications carefully, and that the public will see the need to continue to strive for justice in the future, because this is a very important case that will affect future generations. Once again, I would like to call on the government to solve the case as soon as possible and stop wasting social resources. I'd like to express my gratitude to Taijiman brothers and sisters for working so hard. We hope that more righteous people will continue forward and continue to defend tax justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this important contribution. We now have a second former legislator in Taiwan, Mrs. Shu-Lei Lu, and the floor is yours.
Hello, my name is Shu-Lei. I'm delighted to be here today to discuss human rights in Taiwan, particularly the rights of taxpayers. The Taijiman case was the first petition case I handled as a legislator. Later I discovered that Taijiman had also petitioned others to resolve the case. Many legislators received their petitions and recognized the injustice of the case. Do you think these legislators have done everything possible to help Taijiman? I'm not going to comment on others' efforts. I'll just focus on my own. I held numerous conciliation sessions and repeatedly verified tax data with the National Taxation Bureau and the Ministry of Finance, but they simply ignored me. They just acted as if they were above everyone else and could do whatever they wanted. This is our current situation in Taiwan. We've given too much power to tax officers, and the main problem is that they are not held accountable. Even when a tax officer makes a mistake that causes a taxpayer's family to break up or his business to fail, the tax officer will not be punished. Taijiman does not collapse because it is very strong. Taijiman's Shifu is very firm and unswerving, and the Taijiman members are very united. Victims' human rights, particularly taxpayers' rights, are the least recognized of all human rights. Some administrative enforcement agencies, for example, might carry out an enforcement order without first ensuring that it was warranted. They would accept all cases referred to them by the tax authorities and act in accordance with their instructions. As a result, administrative litigation and appeals are practically meaningless. How many cases are there where taxpayers won when it comes to administrative relief processes for tax problems? Only few people were successful. Taxpayers' prospects of winning their cases are almost zero. Even for people who have filed administrative litigation and won eventually, the enforcement agency can carry out enforcement orders against them by auctioning their houses, cars, and other assets while they are still seeking administrative remedies. Consider this. Can a company continue to exist if its assets are frozen and its bank account is seized? Even if its owner wins administrative action, the company has already collapsed. Did the tax officer who levied the unjustified taxes on the business owner face any consequences? No, the tax officer gets promotion instead. I'll give you an example. There are 3 siblings, 1 sister and 2 brothers. Their grandfather was opposed to their parents' marriage, so their parents moved away from him and had no contact with him since then. The grandfather died afterwards, leaving a large tax debt. Except for their mother, who was in the dark, their relatives all abandoned the inheritance from him. Then their mother died, and they became responsible for their grandfather's tax bill because they did not give up the inheritance. The sister who recently got married and purchased a house, the house was registered in her name because her husband wanted to express his affection for her. However, the house was seized due to her grandfather's tax problem. As a result, the couple's relationship got worse and they frequently quarreled. Their family was almost destroyed because of this unjustified tax bill. The 2 brothers were likewise adversely affected. The tax bureau would withhold 1/3 of their salaries to cover their grandfather's unpaid taxes. In general, the tax bureau never explained why it was withholding people's salaries and simply labeled them as tax evaders. People assumed the brothers were dishonest when they heard the brothers evaded taxes and they would not care the cause of their tax problem. The sister later divorced, and the 2 brothers had been unable to find jobs. They are all miserable. Did the tax bureau provide them with any assistance? No. Additionally, many corporations failed not as a result of their incapability to generate profits, but as a result of the tax bureau's malfeasance. For instance, there was a business which acquired another company. The company it acquired once filed a fake export report to seek a tax refund. The tax bureau detected a tax fraud from the previous owner and launched an investigation against the business. This new owner of the business was arrested and held incommunicado. His employees all quit after he was detained. His wife was a typical housewife who was incapable of running the business by herself. Later, it was discovered that the tax bureau had made a mistake. He was not the one who committed tax fraud. It was the former owner of the company. His business had already crumbled, despite the fact that the criminal court cleared his name and the tax agency afterwards intended to clear his name as well. When he was released from prison, he was almost 60 years old. How could he start from scratch again? His old checks bounced, and his property was seized. The whole thing was a big mess, and all his employees were gone. Therefore, we urge the ruling authorities, those in power, to carefully evaluate and consider taxpayers' rights, especially when the system is flawed. The government has failed to take disciplinary actions against a few unscrupulous tax officers. Even though the Legislative Yuan has passed a bill to establish specialized tax courts, we urge for implementation of taxpayers' rights. Because so many judges in the tax courts have been transferred from the administrative courts, it is practically pointless. If we want the international community to look up to Taiwan and believe that it is truly a country where human rights are respected, we must improve, beginning with protecting taxpayers' rights. And we will deserve the applause from the world.
Thank you so much for this powerful second testimony, reminding us what become of power, which is supposed to be used for the welfare of people when it is in the wrong hand, or it is wrongly used, can destroy family, can destroy business. It's very sad. We now have Dizi, retired English teacher now living in Florida in the USA. I realize at this point that my pronunciation of Taiwanese names is very, very bad, so you will forgive me. I now give you the floor to Mrs. Hsiao Ogle.
Hello, everybody. I'm Long Ogle, living in Florida. On behalf of all Taijimen Dizi, I would like to express my heartfelt appreciation to our distinguished guests for their moral support and their help in our quest for justice. Today, my topic is judiciary, tax system, and human rights. Human rights, like our conscience, are inherent to all human beings, and all individuals are entitled to certain basic rights under any circumstances. This includes certain civil liberty and political rights, the most fundamental of which is the right to life and physical safety, regardless of race, sex, nationality, ethnicity, language, religion, or any other status. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. To violate the most basic human rights, on the other hand, is to deny individuals their fundamental moral entitlements. It is, in a sense, to treat them as if they are less than human and undeserving of respect and dignity. Human rights violation culminate in the greed and the degeneration of human hearts, social chaos, and in many cases, the corruption of governments, police, and judiciary and tax systems. In the beginning of 2000, the taxpayer human rights was adopted as the 12th indicator of human rights development, and now closely monitor how taxation has hurt human rights protection in Taiwan. The number of tax disputes is the highest of all administrative litigation cases. More than 4 million reported cases of owing taxes are outstanding. And our constitutional provision for taxation by law, for rule of law, and for human rights protection have not been honored. Let's take Taijimen case, for example. On December 1996, former prosecutor He Huanren illegally searched the academy, detained Jiang Menren of Taijimen, Dr. Hong Daozi, and froze all Dr. Hong Daozi and Mrs. Hong access. And he violated their rights to life and physical safety. During the investigation, He Huanren allowed the media to film this activity, accept interviews by the media, and discuss the case in public. He violated the right of confidentiality and violated the principle of private investigation by intentionally leaking information to the press. He Huanren also adopted the fourth statement from Mr. Shi, a tax agent of the National Tax Administration, who has never made a thorough investigation of the Taijimen case and charged Jiang Menren, Dr. Hong Daozi, with tax evasion and fraud. Taijimen Dizi, abiding by ancient practice, submitting a monetary gift to our Shifu, Dr. Hong Daozi, to express our gratitude and respect for his teaching. I wonder, is being respect is a crime? I wonder, based on an illegal indictment, the Tech administration further identified Taijimen as a cram school and levy heavy taxes and penalty on the academy. In fact, the Ministry of Education in 1997 through 2000 declared Taijimen Academy was by no means a cram school. Yet, the Tech administration arrogating to itself the power of the Ministry of Education continued to adopt illegal evidence and levy heavy taxes on the academy as a cram school. It violated the procedural codes of criminal law, noted 129. Taijimen went through a district court hearings, all the up to Supreme Court final proceeding and investigation. A total of 40 judges and 8 public prosecutors heard the case. The prosecution ended on July 13, 2007, with a verdict of not guilty. The academy was found to have committed no fraud and no tax evasion. In 2012, the National Administration declared that the Taijimen Qigong Academy was not a cram school. In 2019, the National Tax Bureau re-examined Taijimen Tax Bill for 1991 and for 1993 through 1996. For these 5 years, Taijimen tax bill were 0. After tricking games played by the National Tax Administration, however, the Academy's tax bill for 1992 was not restored. For this 1 year only, the National Tax Bureau continued to levy heavy taxes on Taijimen Academy as a cram school, and together with the Administrative Enforcement Agency illegally seized the Academy's property and put it up for auction and was appropriated for public use. The property was used as a place for Dizi self-cultivation. They infringed upon our property rights and also infringed upon Taijimen Dizi freedom of religions and freedom of choosing their way of life. This is at the core of the corruption and failure of Taijimen judiciary system and tax administration in the Taijimen case. Taijimen Dizi, at home and abroad, had written to the president of Taiwan, the president of 5 Yen, sending thousands of letters appealing for justice in the Taijimen unjust case. Their appeals were to no avail. All this official did was pass the buck, bouncing the letter to one Yen to another. We have not received any direct response. I would like to read to you one of the most preposterous answers. Number 1, pursuant to Article 173 of the Administrative Procedure Act, in any of the following circumstances, the petition may be left unattended to. Number 1, where the petition gives not concrete substance or does not give true names of address. Number 2, where the petition is a repeat or further repeat of the same subject matter which has been appropriately dealt with and clearly answered. This is a blatant falsehood. All the petitioners put their name, true name and addresses. Our petition has never been appropriately dealt with. Their responses have been illogical and untrue to the fact. They twist the fact to suit their purposes. The petition system is not functioning, and Taijimen rights of appeal has been violated. We have been oppressed by the tax administration, prosecuted by misrule of law. Taijimen was prosecuted by the prosecutor and the National Tax Administration. Taijimen has been fighting for justice for 25 years, not for ourselves, but for all the victims oppressed by the tax administration. President Tsai, in your speech of establishment of the National Rights Commission, you mentioned on August 1st, 2020, that the commission is a milestone in protection of human rights, and we vigorously investigated human rights violation. People of Taiwan are watching whether you carry through on the commitment you make in your address. For 25 years, a handful of bloggers officials have blocked the judge's resolution of the Taijimen just case. Our human rights remain unprotected. Our tax judiciary system needs a sweeping change, and our human rights should be honored and protected. Tax and judiciary reform and protection of human rights are what Taiwan needs most to build a prosperous future and a real nation of democracy. Shifu Dr. Hong Daozi encourages us to cultivate our heart as a way to pursue physical, mental, and spiritual health. In addition, we are trained to be law-abiding citizens and to live according to our conscience and justice. Taijimen stress conscience as Milton said, give me the liberty to utter and to argue freely according to conscience above all liberties. In a, President Li Denghui, President Chen Shui-bian, President Ma Ying-jeou, and President Tsai Ing-wen recognized Taijimen's contribution to Taiwan. We have conducted more than 3,000 cultural activities at home and abroad. Taijimen's success in people diplomacy had put Taiwan onto the international stage. This year, we have returned good for evil. When I first Taijimen, I was in my 50s, and now I am 80. Taijimen have fought for tech and judicial and justice for 25 years. How many 25 years do we have in our life, I wonder? I hope that during my lifetime, I can witness Taijimen and justice resolved and justice fulfilled. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for reminding us that life, liberty, and security are basic human rights. It's that simple, but many people just deny that openly, and all things follow. And I also thank you for reminding us that Taiwan is a strong bastion of democracy, and respect for human rights should go hand in hand with that. So we're not opposed to Taiwan, to the government of Taiwan. Taiwan is a very strategic, it's an important country. This is why Taiwan should cope appropriately with what some of these accountants or some of these ministers or some of these representatives did against life, liberty, and security. It is now the time of Ms. Tiffany Shao. She is a senior engineer in a world-leading semiconductor company in Taiwan, and she's also a Taijimen Dizi. So Mrs. Shao, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tiffany. I am an engineer at a world-leading semiconductor manufacturing company. During the pandemic, there was a big challenge of global supply chain risk. Fortunately, I'm able to deal with the situation well, and I'm very grateful to my mother for introducing me to Taijimen 28 years ago when I was a university student, which has changed my life. At Taijimen, my Shifu, Dr. Hong Daozi, teaches me Kung Fu to strengthen my body and guides me to handle people and things with wisdom. I have realized the importance of heart. A kind and happy heart is a key to staying healthy physically and mentally. I like to travel. After joining Taijimen, I went on many trips with the Love the World Cultural Goodwill Group led by Dr. Hong for cultural exchanges. I also participated in some United Nations conference in New York and Vienna. I have broadened my views and realized that Love is a common language of the world. I have also experienced profound joy of heart-to-heart communication. These experiences have not only enriched my life, but also helped me better cooperation with the suppliers in different countries. As I use yin and yang philosophy, I learned entitlement to achieve win-win situation by the balance between caring and demanding. The experiences reinforce the concept that the heart is the utmost importance. Dr. Hong stated in the Declaration of International Love and Peace Day in 2005. When there is no love, there is no peace. Peace needs love and love needs to be balanced. I put love in my work and the results reflect that. With a global pandemic raging in 2020, I needed to expand the production capacity to fulfill the strong IC demands around the world, so the students can study with the tablets and the parents can work with notebooks at home. At the stress of work, I also need to take time off to protect my second home, Taiwan, and stop a few bureaucrats from abusing their power to illegal auction our land and seize our properties. This illegal auction resulted from the illegal searches by prosecutor Ho Kuan-ren in 1996 and the force prosecuted Taiwan in 1997. His indictment was only a statement to be verified by court and cannot be used as evidence. However, simply based on the unlawful document, the NTB, National Taxation Bureau, issued illegal tax bills with huge penalties to Taiwan, treating it as a crime school. In 1999, while the criminal case was still on trial stage, 88 legislators signed a joint petition requesting the NTB to revoke illegal tax disposition because it violated procedural justice. In 2002, the Control Yuan, after its identification, pointed out Ho Kuan-ren 8 major violations of law in handling Taiwan case and request the Ministry of Justice explain. In 2005, the Control Yuan listed Taiwan case as a landmark case of human rights protection in the General Report and Work of Human Rights Protection of Control Yuan. In 2007, the Supreme Court found defendants innocent of all charges as found there is no taxation evasion or violation of the Tax Collection Act. Afterwards, the innocent defendants who were detained all received national compensation for illegal detention. In 2009, the Control Yuan investigated the NTB's handling of Taiwan tax case and indicated that NTB had 7 major violations of law, including failure to clarify the nature of the income in question. In 2012, based on interministerial meeting resolution of Executive Yuan, the NTB conducted a public investigation, and all of 7,400 pieces of evidence show that the red envelope given to Dr. Hong were gifts. It also proved there is no tax evasion. In 2018, the Superior Administrative Court ruled that Taiwan is a menpai of Qigong, martial arts and self-cultivation, and stated that NTB failed to consider the criminal's decision and the survey result, which showed that the red envelope to Dr. Hong were gifts. In examination, Ren also accepted Taiwan Dizi's petition and stated that Taiwan could follow legal procedure to seek remedies. The presidential office also issued a letter demanding the Executive Yuan to handle the case according to the criminal decision and the law. However, abusing its power and overriding the presidency and 5 branches Yuan, the NTB continued to issue illegal tax bills to Taiwan. Finally, on August 21st, 2020, collaborating with enforcement agency, the NPD illegally auctioned Taiwan's land intended for building self-cultivation center and nationalized it. When I learned that a few government officials abuse their power and take citizens' properties away, I realized when people are deprived of even their basic right to live, it is pointless to own computers, tablets, or other electronic devices. Therefore, even though I feel exhausted at work, I'm still willing to do whatever I can to reform the unjust system, which is more meaningful than my job to provide IC for electronic products around the world. I believe that the novel coronavirus could be controlled one day, even though the global pandemic is now growing exponentially. However, when the government administration and controls and courts have lost their ability to rectify themselves, the result, corruption, like a virus, will spread within the system. Only with awakening of citizens and the parliament that represent the voice of people and feel its duty to supervise and correct the government, can be the system generate antibodies and remove virus that is undermining national progress and human development. That is the reason why Taiwan has insisted on doing what is right and never compromised in the past 25 years. According to the observation of my friend, who was worked for the environmental human rights protection in Scandinavia for many years, during the pandemic, it is hard for foreign journalists to explore human rights violation in many areas. And thus, governments can violate human rights much easier in guise of pandemic prevention. In times of COVID-19 crisis, responsible parliament continue work remotely via nationally and internationally meeting to stop pandemic and resolve conflicts through dialogue, allocation, resource friendly and peacefully. Up to now, more than 300 legislators from different parties in Taiwan have given counter-signature, made proposals, questioned government officials, and called press conferences, public hearing, and coordination meetings, pointing out that NTP broke the laws and requesting the illegal tax distribution be cancelled. I sincerely hope that former or present legislators will continue to urge Taiwan government to rectify the fake Taijiman case as soon as possible, revoke the illegal tax bill, return Taijiman's land for self-cultivation center that was illegally auctioned and nationalized, and return justice to Taijiman, Shifu, and Dizi, and clear their names. I really appreciate this opportunity to share on the International Day of Parliamentarism. I hope through international support and assistance, every parliament can be effective and supervise its government to ensure human rights protection when administrating its policy. Only when human rights are protected can the world become peaceful and people be happy, healthy, and free from fear. And ultimately, love and peace can prevail on earth and sustainable development can be attained. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One of the most incredible aspects of the Taijiman case is that the guardians of the law, some of them were people who went against the law. And that has been going on with no solution for a quarter of a century. This is, to me, this is quite incredible for a democracy. It is now the time to listen to another witness, Ms. Pamela Chen, Taijiman Dizi. Ms. Chen, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. This is Pamela from Los Angeles, California, United States. I'm very honored to have the opportunity today to say something and to express my heartfelt opinions. December 1996 marks the beginning of the persecution of Taijiman Qigong Academy in Taiwan. Back then, I had just graduated from university and started working in a US affiliated company. Prosecutor Ho Kuan-ren violated the principle that prosecutorial investigation should not be disclosed, and he used the media to release false information about Taijiman. Within a short period of time, there were over 400 false news reports about Taijiman. As a result, My colleague would give me strange looks. That was a big blow to me as I just started working. When I joined Taijimen, I was a junior in university. Although I was only in my early 20s, I had been bothered by frequent colds and poor sleep quality for many years. After practicing Taijimen Qigong, my health improved dramatically. Because of that, many of my family members, friends, and teachers joined Taijimen after seeing my changes. I'm so happy that I recommend them to join Taijimen, which is such a good place. However, Prosecutor Ho falsely accused Taijimen of fraud, tax evasion, and raising goblins, which was horrifying and non-scientific. The media continued to spread false news to ruin Taijimen's reputation. They plant seeds of doubt in people's hearts throughout Taiwan. The prosecutor abused his power to incite fear in people. Many friends of mine who joined Taijimen because of my recommendations start to keep a considerable distance from me after the smear campaign against Taijimen. They even stopped contacting me, which scared me so much. These false reports ruined their opportunity to improve their physical and mental health at Taijimen. At the beginning of the case, Prosecutor Ho said in the media that he would detain 200 more people for the case. At that time, the Grandmaster Shifu and his wife, Shimu, and some of my fellow Taijimen brothers and sisters had been wrongly accused and detained. I really want to do something to help. Luckily, I was honored to have the opportunity to be a messenger, to help bring documents to the defense lawyer and bring relevant information back to my fellow Taijimen brothers and sisters before I went to work or during my lunch break. I would never forget the first time I met the lawyer. He reminded me to pay attention to my personal safety because I might be tracked and taped, and I must be cautious in taking notes. If I'm not careful, I may be taken into the investigation bureau. Therefore, I would often keep several sets of clothes in my car so that I could change into them at any time. The short-handed notes used in different codes to avoid implicating my brothers and sisters. Important message were conveyed in person to avoid being monitored. In those days, I had never told anyone about this. I kept it deep in my heart for 25 years. I was often shocked by the first-hand information given by the lawyer, since it was very negative and untrue. One raining day, I sat in my car alone, filled great sadness. I wept loudly and asked God, why must this happen to me? I'm under 25 years old. Why should I see this darkness at such a young age? Why is there a persecutor in Taiwan that cannot distinguish true from false and right from wrong? And I still believe that this is a democratic country that respects the rule of law. Is there any hope for Taiwan? Years later, I finally understood why the Taijimen incident occurred. After Taiwan's first direct presidential election, the government launched a political purge in the name of religious crackdown. Although Taijimen didn't take any political side, it was caught in the crossfire. Regarding to the fabricated Taijimen case, Taijimen did not owe any tax. The tax bill issued by the National Tax Bureau at that time did not have any legal basis. Simply based on the information in the false indictment fabricated by the prosecutor Ho, the National Tax Bureau directly imposed tax on Taijimen. such tax bills were invalid. After 3 criminal trials, the Supreme Court ruled that Tai Chi-man was not guilty of tax evasion, and Tai Chi-man did not owe any tax. The indictment on which the National Tax Bureau issues its tax bills to Tai Chi-man was thrown out by the court. Despite the fact that the Supreme Court found the defendants not guilty of tax evasion or any other charges, the fact that the control yuan indicate Prosecutor Ho had 8 major violations of law in his handling of Tai Chi-man case. And the National Tax Bureau had 7 major violations of law in its handling of the Tai Chi-man tax case. The Administration Enforcement Agency under the Ministry of Justice and the National Tax Bureau under the Ministry of Finance disregarded these facts. To get performance bonus, they worked together to unlawfully auction Dr. Hong's land intended for a self-cultivation center for Tai Chi-man and confiscated it. Laws are made to maintain social security. Court decisions should be followed. The judiciary serves as the last line of defense for social justice and safeguards the nation's democracy and rule of law. When the criminal decision has clearly pointed out the administration agency's mistake, the administration agency should correct it according to the rule of the court, so that the legal and tax system can win people's trust and the people can live in peace and security. I couldn't help recalling the day I cried in my car. 25 years have passed, but Taiwan's democracy, rule of law, and human rights haven't improved much. Now that administrative agency is overriding the court decision, is Taiwan backsliding to the authoritarian era? Why should I have to open my heart again and again to talk about the Tai Chi-man case? As an immigrant, I really love the place where I was born, Taiwan. And I hope the people living there really happy and safe. Due to the unjust case of Tai Chi-man, I saw the doctrines of human nature and the injustice for the system, and thus accumulate a lot of negative emotions in me. In the past 25 years, thanks to the teaching of my master, I have obtained a lot of wisdom and strength to have helped me to move forward. I have greatly healed my emotional wounds. In the Tai Chi-man case, Shifu and Shimu are the ones whose rights have been directly and severely violated, and the ones who have endured gross injustice and insults. However, Shifu and Shimu always remind us not to harbor resentment or hatred, but embrace hope and courage. He encouraged us to work hard, be patient, and be peaceful in face of this ordeal. Not only should we not harbor hatred in our hearts, but we should also love Taiwan, assist Taiwan, and help Taiwanese people. Because injustice against one person is injustice against all people. And the injustice endured by Tai Chi-man may experience by the other individuals or organizations as well. He also inspired us to love Taiwan, to stand up, speak up, and take actions to improve Taiwan's legal and tax system and prevent other people in Taiwan from experiencing the same injustice that we have suffered. 9 years ago, I chose to immigrate to the United States. But every year around the anniversary of the December 19 incident. I miss my family in Taiwan, my master, my brothers and sisters of Taijimen. Since the coldest winter to me 25 years ago to this day, they have been insisting on fighting for justice. On many occasions, my family traveled to Taiwan to join the protest in front of the presidential office building. We have used concrete action to show our support for Taijimen and our determination to redress this unjust case together with other Taijimen brothers and sisters. Although I live in the United States, I've written petition letters to President Tsai Ing-wen, the premier of the Legislative Yuan, and the President of Control Yuan. Regretfully, I only received automated replies. I also present this unjust case to senators and members of Congress in the United States. Surprisingly, they really listened to me and wrote to the State Department to ask questions for me. And I felt very touched. Their attitude was different towards listening to people's voices. That made me realize that it means to be people-centered. I feel my voices was respected and thankful in my heart. The Taijimen case is a well-known case of injustice and falsehood. For more than 20 years, all the evidence issued by the government has proved that Taijimen was an innocent victim. In 2002, the investigation report of Control Yuan clearly stated that Prosecutor Hou Kuan-ren had 8 major violations of law in handling the Taijimen case, and that is his indictment for information was contradictory, and that his bringing to a public prosecution based on the indictment was not in accordance with the rules of evidence. Therefore, the Control Yuan asked the Ministry of Justice to take disciplinary action against Hou. Right after Control Yuan's investigation report came out, the government should resolve it, the Taijimen case, and stop violating human rights of Taijimen Shifu and Dizi. However, the Taiwanese government did not do so. It is outraged that Prosecutor Hou Kuan-ren got promoted to Deputy Director of the Agency Against Corruption under the Ministry of Justice. Can the agency be honest and upright with an unscrupulous person as its leader? It is hard to imagine that the agency can function well. Moreover, the duties of Control Yuan are to exercise the power of impeachment, correction, and audit against the administrative authorities, and to file corrective cases and receive petitions from the people. But so far, Prosecutor Hou Kuan-ren has not been punished for abusing his power and breaking the law. And he was even being promoted. It is obvious that the Control Yuan was bullied and its authority was disregarded. In 2007, the third trial ruled that Taijimen was not guilty of tax evasion or any other charges. And by the end of 2009, Taijimen Shifu and Dizi had received national compensation for wrongful imprisonment. This means that the government admitted its mistakes, but government did not really return justice to Taijimen Shifu and Dizi. Instead, the government officials protect each other and connived with the National Taxation Bureau and the enforcement agency to rob people's property. In 2011, the Executive Yuan held an interministerial meeting, and the National Tax Bureau conducted an open survey. And the written statements by 7,401 respondents all indicate that the red envelopes to Dr. Hong were gifts, which was consistent with the criminal decision. At this point, the National Taxation Bureau should have resolved the entire case of injustice. However, the National Tax Bureau broke its promise and continued to issue unjustified tax bill to Taijimen. And the Executive Yuan also disobeyed the meeting resolution and broke its promise to the people. In a democracy respecting the rule of law, providing effective remedies to its people is essential to protecting human rights and ending perpetual human rights violations. But in Taiwan, the system of relief for the people has failed because government officials are protecting one another. Although Taiwan has incorporated the International Human Rights Covenants, ICCPR and ICESCR, into domestic law in 2009, claiming to be in line with international human rights standards. But in the case of Taijimen, this ICCPR and ICESCR are not followed. Unethical government officials deceive the nation and the world. In my letters, I have written to the heartbreaking true stories of Taijimen, Shifu, and Dizi during the last 20 years, as well as my expectations for Taiwan, which were not met at all. Many Taiwanese scholars and even international experts, like here today, organizations, and also United Nations accredited NGO, Association of World Citizens, have expressed their support for Taijimen on this long road to rectifying the case. Because we are upholding the truth, justice, democracy, many people become our allies and are willing to speak up for us. July 13, 2001, will mark the 40th anniversary of the redress of the Taijimen case. With regard to the Taiwanese government's unlawful confiscation of Taijimen's land, intent for the self-cultivation center in August 2020, I will turn my sadness into strength. I will insist on doing the right thing, and so will my next generation. I sincerely hope that the Taiwanese government will also show courage to do the right thing and immediately end the persecution of Taijimen. I would like to see the government officials in Taiwan to act with conscience and return justice to Taijimen, which is composed of kind people who love Taiwan and are defending justice with their lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chen, for many things, for your moving words, and last but not the least, for reminding us the bad role that the media can play in this landscape. Media that are turning from watchdog of democracy to mouthpiece of abuse. It's very sad, and I am a journalist, so I'm really touched by this, and this is a problem of democracies. We now move to the last, but not the least, of our testimonials for the second part of the webinar. Ms. Eileen Ho, she's a marketing designer in Taiwan and Taijimen Dizi. Ms. Ho, the floor is yours.
Hello and good day. I'm Eileen, and I'm honored to have this opportunity to attend this forum on the International Day of Parliamentarism. First, my sincere thanks go to all the panelists for your contribution to justice and righteousness. During a time of turbulence, your voices ignite the spark of justice and encourage me deeply and prompting me to believe that justice will come one day and that human rights will be upheld. You might be curious, why would a young woman in her 20s living in a democratic nation lost confidence in justice and righteousness? The reason is that I've been living in a fake democracy, a situation worse than totalitarianism. I'm the victim of the Taiwan persecution, a case that was condemned by the Control Yuan as one of the manifestations of human rights violation. I believe it is also an important lesson for global citizens to learn, showing us how to protect our rights under the legal and taxation system of a state machine. It represents an entire picture of how a few delinquent officials form a formidable state thundering machine under the guise of democracy. It's a real-life case of self-interest that undermines the constitution system and persecutes people by overriding the 5 pillars of government on the pretext of increasing national tax revenue. Tens of thousands of innocent victims were adversely affected, including me. My mom was a single mother with debts and 3 children to look after. She was very busy. I could only spend an hour or 2 with her every day before bedtime. When she started to fight for the Taiwan case, the time in which I could see her further diminished. I used to walk past her room before going to bed, but the room was always dark and empty. So basically, my sister and I have to spend our childhood with barely our mom around. Around junior high school, Taiwan Dizi decided to stand up for their rights to practice their beliefs and culture. Gradually, I found that whenever I discussed this matter with my friends, I was scorned and questioned. Even though they believe in the court's verdict of not guilty and its decision to impose no taxation in the final trial, our friendship was still damaged. That was because prosecutor Ho Kwon manipulated the media, defaming us as a cult when the case started. So, since the first time I advocate for justice, I have had to face a dilemma every time I protest on the streets. I have to choose keep silent or lose another friend. And we all know that the most important matter for teenagers is their friends. So I was really panicked and lonely for many years. A similar situation happened to many young Dizi of Taiwan, with some of them even being bullied in school. And in the first week of my freshman year at university, I realized that the education system in Taiwan was not suitable for me. However, I still chose to stay because I'm afraid that if I've left this country, my family, my Shifu, my Shimei, and my brothers and sisters might be harmed again. It has been 25 years, but this prosecution nightmare still haunts us. We have given up on our dreams. We have been struggling to make ends meet while fighting for this case. Many of our brothers and sisters has been traumatized by lengthy prosecution. And some of them even being forced to leave beloved Taiwan community because of the opposition from their families. We, a group tens of thousands strong, continue to be persecuted and unable to be vindicated. That alone empower even slightly. If an individual is subjected to tax violation, I'm afraid this situation will never be addressed in his or her entire life. Therefore, redressing the injustice suffered by Taiwan benefits not only this community, but also the tens of thousands victimized by an unsound taxation system. When I was a child, my favorite books were biographies of great men, especially the stories of Buddha and Jesus Christ. I always want to be like them. I want to be someone great and who helps others. However, I've lost my cheerfulness and passion in the face of state violence. But it is my Shifu who suffered too much, taught me and all the Taijimen deeds that we must let go of our hatred so we can help ourselves, help other victims, and even help the nation through peace and sense. So we have channeled our grievances and anger into positive energy and action by joining the Tax and Legal Reform League to promote tax reform throughout Taiwan. To date, over 96% of village chiefs, mayors, and deputies in 20 counties and cities, more than 1,300 public representatives at all levels, and nearly 250,000 individuals have signed the petition for tax reform. But why? Why has this case been neglected for such a long time? One of the reasons is the hollowing out of the parliamentary system, the institution that represents the voice of people. More than 300 members of the Legislative Yuan pointed out the illegalities committed by certain officials of the National Tax Bureau, and they demand the revocation of illegal tax penalties. Nevertheless, there remains a failure to achieve balance in government agencies that are controlled by a few officials who have abused their power. As a result, in August 2020, the site intended to be a cultivation venue of Taijimen was illegally and forcibly auctioned off and nationalized jointly by National Tax Bureau and the Administrative Enforcement Agency under the Ministry of Justice. Mr. Huang Kunguang, a retired tax auditor, mentioned that tax officials have a mindset of ignoring legal basis and apply unconventional taxation measures. Surprisingly, the decisions of these tax officials overriding legislative, judicial, supervisory, and constitutional interpretations of Supreme Justice. This insult is perfectly reflected in the Taijimen case. It is imperative that the failure of the most important mechanism of checks and balances in a democratic country. As Professor Zheng Zilong, a former faculty member of the law department at National Taiwan University, he repeatedly urged and reminds us, Taiwan has not yet achieved true democracy since the dissolution of the dictatorship. And it's even slowly moving towards a totalitarian democracy. The people and parliament should unite as forces of justice. People must raise their voices, defend the rights, and safeguard the parliament system from being trampled. And parliament should, by fulfilling its responsibility, amend laws to protect human rights and supervise government agency officials to avoid concentration and corruption of power. These takes are important in realizing checks and balances in Constitution and regaining the confidence of people. The Constitution will be able to protect the supreme dignity of human rights, and unscrupulous officials will have no opportunity to deploy taxation to cause harm. We expect Parliament to be guided by conscience in monitoring the administration to realize transitional justice and prosecution. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank all the former legislators and Dizi for their important testimonies. We now conclude this second and final section, and I have been touched by the very final sentence of the second video that we watched today, and the sentence was, "Who can restore the lost time?" And this reminds me of a wonderful line by English poet T.S. Eliot that regarded the poet's mission embodied in this sentence: redeem the time, redeem the dream. With this cheerful and hopeful note, I leave the floor to Professor Eileen Barker. She is one of the most famous and important scholars on new religion. She is Professor Emeritus of Sociology in the London School of Economics and Political Science in the UK. Professor Barker, the floor is yours for the final concluding remarks.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here, although it isn't a delightful subject. As Willy Fautré explained to us in the beginning, the ramifications of this case go far beyond this case. It is a very, very important one. PierLuigi Zoccatelli reminded us of the importance of the separation of powers. But it seems to me, in a way, there is a separation of powers, but the wrong kind of separation of powers in this case. He introduced the concept of transitional justice, which is what I think sociologists might call a kind of cultural lag, and how there were leftover toxic aspects that we might find as Taiwan had moved in the recent past to a democracy. I think this is important, and I'm sure there's a lot of truth in it, but I'm afraid we can find a whole lot of the problems that seem to be touched on here in far longer democracies as well. The idea that over 300 legislators have said that the situation should be changed is just incredible. Why didn't it happen? And one answer that's come up is bureaucracy. Massimo talked about Edmund Burke and how he had talked about French Parliament being a comedy and the United Kingdom more dignified Shakespeare. Well, I don't think Edmund Burke was looking at the present Parliament in the UK. The only thing that comes to me is that Shakespeare has the fool in most of his plays, and the fool is anything but foolish. The fool is very wily and can get round all sorts of things. And I think that is perhaps more applicable than one would like when looking at a lot of parliaments today. I liked the idea of the metaphor of the theatre, and my mind's been going round in that quite a lot because it's a metaphor that I like playing with. He talked about the members of parliament playing to the voting gallery, how they weren't real people in a sense. The theatre isn't a reality. But of course, in the theatre, there is the whole backstage paraphernalia, and the bureaucracy is the backstage to parliament. They can be the puppet masters. I don't know if any of you have seen a very popular program in the UK. It's called Yes Minister. And they're just replaying it. And I actually happened to be watching one last night. I'd seen it before, perhaps twice, because it is very funny and very, very troubling. The thing is that there is the minister who is a bit of a fool, but idealistic and wants to do the right thing. And then there's his very, very clever secretary, the civil servant, the bureaucracy that he has to deal with. And this civil servant is always saying, yes, minister, of course, minister. and doing exactly the opposite and managing to change the whole situation so that the actual ministers' ideological beliefs and workings and pronouncements are turned upside down so that they fit into what would be good for the bureaucracy, to keep the bureaucracy as it is. Last night it was stopping introducing more women, but there are all kinds of other things that somehow the bureaucracy, while always saying, yes, minister, of course, minister, what a good idea, minister, actually got everything to change. And I happen to have, as a colleague at the London School of Economics, somebody who had been working with the government quite a lot and was one of the few people who would give information to the script writers for this program. And he said that it's actually very, very like reality, horribly like reality. And I'd like to send the script writers, except I'm not sure they're still alive because it's been going on for so long. I think both of the main actors have already died, but I'd like to send them to Taiwan, if possible, because I think they could make a very funny, but very unfunny story out of what's going on with Taiji men. A few individuals have been hijacking the whole government. Watching the video, and I'd seen it before, and seeing it again, it was just as tragic. But the thing that struck me this time was a line something like, "Grey hairs grow one by one." And that tied in with what Professor Jacobsen said about justice delayed is justice denied. And what we've just been hearing about the T.S. Eliot line, even now returned, can never take back the lost years. And I think the time that this has been going on is just, well, it would seem to be incredible. The first time I heard about the situation, I just thought it was absolutely incredible because my experience of Taiwan was not of a totalitarian democracy, which is what Eileen called it as a possibility just now. It had seemed to me a great success as a democracy. Now, obviously, I wasn't an expert, but I did find it peculiar that this was happening in Taiwan. There are lots of other countries where I wouldn't have been so surprised. And I wrote Massimo Introvigne a private note saying, well, what was so special or different about Taiji men? And I'm afraid Massimo, unusually for him, didn't satisfy me with his answer. So the next time I was watching one of these seminars or webinars, I asked the question publicly, but I still didn't get a satisfactory answer. Now, it wasn't that I was assuming that Taiji men was bad, but I am interested as a sociologist of religion who's been studying new religions in why people think that they ought to be singled out, and was Taiji men seen as a cult, and how did they differ from other Qigong groups? And again, I really wasn't very satisfied. But listening to what's been happening today, I now see that I was asking the wrong question. Former legislator Miss Shu made it absolutely clear to me that there was nothing special about Taiji men that would make them subject of such treatment. They were irrelevant almost. It was the tax office that I needed to understand. But I also now realize that there is actually something special about Taiji men. They're what my grandmother, who was a sort of fierce Scot, would call bloody-minded. They're not going to give up. They're gutsy. They're uncompromising. They're fighting, not just for their own rights, but also for those of others, for Taiwan, and for the belief in the abstract concept of human rights, trying to make sure that it's a concrete reality that can be enjoyed throughout the world. Thank you, Taiji men. Good luck. Don't give up. That's it.
Marco, will you continue? Conclude?
Goes back again to me. Okay, no problem. I've been, as usual, delighted by Professor Barker's including remark. And at the cost of repeating myself, I will again quote T.S. Eliot, "Redeeming the Time, Redeeming the Dream." I think that this goes along with Professor Barker's final sentence. Thank you, Taiji man. Good luck for your case. You're an example. We will support your case for freedom and justice. And we invite everyone who's following us today for the next webinar down the line, and there will be another occasion. This is a series of webinars. We will have time to discuss again this important case, which theoretically, legally is solved, but it is not in practice, and practice do count very much in this case. If there is nothing else as to questions or brief comments, Willy, yes, floor is yours. You are muted. You're muted.
Sorry. Just the last comment. When I was working at the cabinet of the Ministry of Education, and it was the first time I was in a political context, I realized that I was at the top of a political pyramid. But in fact, it was wrong perception, because I remember that every time that a decision had to be taken at the level of the minister, they were afraid of the administration and bureaucracy. Why? Because the culture of the civil servants of the administration was this one. We are here for a few decades, maybe for our whole life in this administration, but you ministers, you're only here for maybe 4 years or 2 years or even less. And so you can give us orders, but we have more power than you. And I realized that the politicians were aware of the power of the administration and that it was more powerful, that administration, than the mandate that the electors had given them. So I think we must introduce that parameter in our reflection on how to work on the case of Taiji men in Taiwan. I don't have the answer, I don't have the solution at this stage, but I have some ideas that I will share with Fabienne and others afterwards. Thank you.
It's very good. So we look forward to our another webinar. Professor Introvigne?
Yes, just a quick reaction to Eileen. You are right. I believe the way to go on and answer your question is to do a comparative study of what happened before 1996 and in 1996 to other religious movements. And it comes out there is quite a lot of material, but this material is in in Chinese. So I'm trying to persuade Professor Tsai, who was in one of our webinars, to do a comparative study. And he mentioned other movements who went in the late 1980s and the 1990s through similar problems. The difference being that some of these groups retired to pursue a communal life in remote areas, and other large groups settled. The peculiarity of Taiji men was that they didn't settle because they didn't want to admit they had evaded any tax. And also at the very center of their experience is this idea of conscience. And if you are a man or woman of conscience, you believe you should pay your taxes. So even to pay £1 or $1 to settle, but to admit they practice or were guilty of tax evasion is something they didn't want to do. And I understand other movements which were also victims of these post-martial law crackdowns. They just settled and paid comparatively reasonable amounts to get rid of the problem. And they may have been the only one who didn't want to settle. But as I say, the only way of answering this question is do a comparative study of crackdowns of new religion and spiritual movements. All the material is in Chinese. There is a Christian group, I understand, even did 5 videos on their case, but again, they are in Chinese. So we need the help of Professor Tsai and other good people to do this comparative study. And I'm sure this comparative study will shed a lot of light on the peculiarities of Taiji men as well.
Thank you so much. So scholars are promising us new food for the brain on this important subject. And in parallel, of course, all the action that we as media can do for helping the clergymen and activists for human rights and democracy will do our moral duty. We may have 1 minute for more.
Yeah,
talk,
can I say a few words before ending? On behalf of our Shifu and Shimu and all the Taiji sisters and brothers around the world, I would like to sincerely extend our appreciation for your continuous support and your willing to help and for us to fight together until the justice is returned to Taiji men. Sincere appreciation to all of you today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
so much. And with this wonderful week, I guess our webinar is concluded. And thank you all.
Yeah, if you have any question, yeah, you know how to contact us. Okay.
Thank you.
Have a great evening and great night. Thank you all, and see you next time.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.